Hey guys, welcome back to Mind Your Conversions, brought to you by Fiverr. If you're new here, this is where we break down the art and science of marketing with our hosts, Liv and Max. They will help you understand marketing better, explore fresh strategies, and most importantly, drive higher conversions. So whether you're a seasoned pro, or even if you're just getting started, you're at the right place.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive on conversion rate optimization.
CRO.
Yeah, CRO, exactly.
Yeah.
Getting those website visitors to actually click buy.
Right.
You sent over this really interesting document with like 15 best practices for CRO in 2024. And it's packed with insights. It's really interesting. One stat that really jumped out at me was that 99.9% of customers read product reviews before they buy something.
Wow.
That's basically everybody, right?
That's amazing. It just shows you how important social proof is, right? Like, people really want to know what other people think before they make a decision.
It's like getting a recommendation from a friend.
Exactly.
But this document, it doesn't just scratch at the surface, it really digs deep.
It does.
It starts off by saying, look, CRO is crucial in today's world. Like, it's super competitive out there, digital marketing.
Oh, yeah. It's more
know.
important now than ever, I think.
It says even marketers who are actively working on CROs struggle to meet those industry benchmarks.
Yeah, and that's because things are changing so quickly online, Customer expectations are always evolving.
Right.
There's new technology, there's social media trends, and it's tough to keep up,
So how do we keep up? How do we stay ahead of the curve?
Well, the document lays out a few core principles for effective CRO.
Yep.
And the first one is all about highlighting your unique selling proposition.
Your USP.
Your USP, exactly, making sure it's super clear to visitors.
So don't make them hunt for it,
No. Hit them with it right away, like Warby Parker, for example.
Oh, yeah, their home try-on program.
Exactly. That's a great USP,
Yeah.
It solves a real problem for people who are buying glasses online.
Right, because you never know how those frames are going to look on your face.
Exactly. You don't want to buy something and then it doesn't look good and you got to return it.
Yeah.
They remove that barrier and it builds trust.
That's so smart.
Yeah.
And it's not always about discounts. Right.
Right, exactly. The document talks about incentives beyond just price. Like free trials, money-back guarantees.
Yeah.
Those can be really powerful, It's about reducing the risk for the customer.
So they feel more comfortable.
Yeah, they feel like, hey, I'm not going to lose anything by trying this out.
Okay, so we got the USP, we got some incentives in place. What's next?
Well, next we've got to eliminate those conversion barriers.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, those things that make people abandon their carts.
Oh, yeah, like slow loading times.
Yes, exactly.
Or a checkout process that takes forever.
That's a big one. People don't want to spend 20 minutes filling out forms.
Especially on their phone.
Oh, especially on their phone.
Tiny little keyboard.
And unclear product descriptions.
Right.
If people don't understand what they're buying, they're not going to buy it.
It all comes down to user experience.
It does.
Making it as easy as possible.
Smooth, easy, enjoyable. Yeah.
So, and then finally, there's the trust factor.
Oh, absolutely. Trust is huge. People need to feel safe and secure when they're shopping online.
Especially when they're giving over their credit card information.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to feel like you're going to get scammed or something.
So how do we build that trust?
Well, the document talks about creating a transparent environment, being upfront about data collection, having clear terms and conditions, and making it easy for customers to contact support.
Yeah, so they know there's a real person on the other end.
Right, exactly. It's all about building that relationship and showing that you're a trustworthy business.
Okay, so those are like the foundational principles.
Exactly.
Now let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Let's dive into those 15 best practices.
Yeah, let's do it. The first one it talks about is understanding your visitor's behavior.
Yes, figuring out where they're dropping off in the funnel.
Identifying those funnel leaks.
Exactly. Those leaks are costing you money.
Yeah, so how do we do that? How do we identify those leaks?
Well, the document mentions some really cool tools,
Okay.
like heat maps, for example.
Heat maps.
Yeah, they visually show you where people are clicking and scrolling on your website.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really insightful. And then their exit surveys.
The exit surveys.
Yeah, so when someone leaves your website, you can ask them why they left.
Oh, I see.
That can give you some really valuable feedback.
Yeah, it's like, hey, why'd you abandon your cart?
Exactly. What made you leave?
Right. So let's say you're seeing a big drop-off on the shipping page.
Uh-huh. That's a clue.
What does that tell us?
That tells us that maybe your shipping costs are too high, or maybe your policies are unclear.
So we need to investigate further.
Yes, exactly. Do some digging and see what's going on.
So we're not just guessing, we're using data.
Exactly. Data is your best friend in CRO.
Right, right. And speaking of data, the next best practice is all about setting clear goals.
Absolutely. You can't just make random changes and hope for the best, right?
You need a hypothesis.
You need a clear hypothesis to test, yeah.
So it's not just like, let's make the button bigger and see what happens.
No, not quite. It's more like, we think that changing the button color from red to green will increase click-through rates by 10%.
Oh, okay, so very specific.
Yeah, that way you have a clear objective and a way to measure your success.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, the document also mentions that it's not just about the final sale, right?
Right.
It's about those micro-conversions along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Those micro-conversions can tell you a lot about user behavior.
So things like newsletter signups.
Yes, newsletter signups, add to carts.
Add to carts.
Those are all valuable signals.
So, for example, if you see a lot of people adding items to their cart, but not completing the purchase, what does that tell us?
That might indicate a problem with your checkout process,
Not necessarily a lack of interest in the product.
Exactly. Maybe it's too complicated, or maybe there are some hidden fees.
Right, so we need to figure out where that bottleneck is.
Exactly, yeah. Optimize that checkout flow.
Now, this next best practice is all about patience.
Oh, yes. Patience is key in CRO.
It says don't interrupt those tests prematurely.
That's right. Let them run their course so you can get statistically significant results.
So we're not jumping the gun.
No. We need to be sure that the results we're seeing are real and not just random chance.
Because if you stop the test too early,
you could get misleading results.
You could think something's working when it's actually not.
Exactly. And there are tools out there that can help you calculate the right test duration.
Oh, okay, so it takes the guesswork out of it.
To some extent, yeah. You still need to understand your data and your goals.
Right. And speaking of things that might seem obvious but are often overlooked, the document highlights the importance of double-checking your experiment setup.
Oh, yes. This is crucial.
Making sure that your website is rendering correctly.
Across all devices, all browsers.
Yeah, because people are browsing on their phones, their tablets.
Desktops, laptops, everything. You got to make sure it looks good everywhere.
Especially since it says 85% of consumers actually expect a better mobile experience.
Yeah, mobile is huge these days. If your website isn't mobile-friendly, you're going to lose a lot of potential customers.
Okay, so let's talk messaging.
Okay.
The document uses this interesting analogy.
Oh, yeah, I love this one.
The Stanley hammer.
The Stanley hammer.
What's that all about?
It's about focusing on your offering's core functionality.
Okay.
And making sure your messaging is crystal clear.
So no fancy jargon?
No. Keep it simple, straightforward,
Straight to the point.
Exactly. What problem does your product solve? How does it benefit the customer?
And don't get lost in all those bells and whistles.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes less is more.
Now, as your brand grows, the document emphasizes the importance of revisiting those buyer personas.
Oh, absolutely. Your target audience can change over time.
So we need to stay up to date.
Yeah, we can't rely on outdated assumptions.
Because if our messaging isn't resonating with our target audience,
we're not going to see those conversions.
It's all about staying relevant.
And speaking of relevance, let's talk social proof. This document, it throws out some pretty incredible stats about the power of customer testimonials and reviews.
Yeah, 99.9% of customers read reviews.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And 98% consider them essential when making purchasing decisions.
So basically everyone's looking at reviews.
Everyone, yeah.
And that just reinforces that idea of social proof.
It does, We're social creatures. We want to know what other people think.
And it builds trust.
It builds trust, exactly.
So if you're not showcasing those positive reviews,
you're missing out.
Yeah, big time. Now, onto a small but potentially impactful tactic.
I love these little tweaks.
Offering both a buy now and an add to cart option.
It seems simple, but it can make a big difference.
Yeah, because some people are ready to buy right away.
They know what they want. They're ready to go.
And others like to browse, add things to their cart, think about it for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. Give them the option.
Give them the flexibility.
It's all about reducing friction in the buying process.
And another trust-building tip, be super clear about your return and exchange policies.
Oh, yeah. Transparency is key.
Don't hide them in the fine print.
No. Make them easy to find, easy to understand.
Because if people are hesitant to buy,
knowing they can easily return something if they don't like it can give them that extra push.
It just makes them feel more confident.
It does. It reduces that risk.
Okay, now this next one is interesting. It suggests considering live chat support.
Live chat, yeah, it's becoming more and more popular.
For real-time customer assistance.
It can be really effective.
It says it could lead to a 48% increase in revenue per chat hour.
Wow, that's significant.
And a 40% rise in conversion rates.
Those are impressive numbers.
So what's the magic behind live chat?
Well, I think it's the immediacy of it, you know? People can get their questions answered right away. They don't have to wait for an email or a phone call.
It's like having a salesperson right there with them.
Exactly, yeah, guiding them through the process.
Very cool. Okay, let's get into A/B testing.
Oh, yeah. A/B testing, this is like the bread and butter of CRO.
It's all about testing everything.
Everything. Your headlines, your calls to action, your images.
Even tiny little tweaks?
Yeah, even small changes can make a big difference.
So why is A/B testing so important?
Well, it takes the guesswork out of optimization.
Okay.
You're not just relying on your gut feeling or what you think will work.
You're letting the data guide your decisions.
Exactly. You run controlled experiments, you gather data, and you see what actually performs better.
It's like a scientific approach to marketing.
It is. It's a data-driven approach.
And speaking of data, the document stresses the importance of documentation.
Oh, yeah. Documentation is key.
Keeping detailed records of your experiments.
Everything. The changes you made, the results you observed.
So you can track your progress.
Yeah. And also learn from your mistakes, you know?
Right, so you don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again.
Exactly. And it helps you build a culture of experimentation within your team.
Oh. Well, that's a good point. So it's not just about individual experiments, it's about continuous improvement.
That's right. Always learning, always growing.
And let's not forget about those potential customers who almost converted but slipped away at the last minute.
Oh, yeah, those abandoned carts.
The document recommends using retargeting to bring them back.
Retargeting can be really effective.
It says 26% of users actually return thanks to retargeting efforts.
That's a pretty good return.
Yeah, it's like a gentle reminder, you know.
Exactly. Hey, you forgot about something.
Come back and finish your purchase.
And you can personalize those messages based on what they were looking at.
So it's not just a generic ad.
No, it's targeted and relevant.
Okay, and finally, the document highlights the importance of having the right CRO tool.
Oh, yeah. There are so many tools out there.
It can be overwhelming.
It can be. You need to find one that fits your needs and your budget.
One that helps you streamline the process.
Exactly. And manage all those different elements of CRO.
Okay, so that was a whirlwind tour of those 15 best practices.
Oh, wow. We covered a lot of ground.
I'm curious to hear what stood out to you as particularly interesting or insightful.
You know, what really resonated with me was the emphasis on the psychological aspects of CRO.
Okay.
It's not just about technical tweaks and hacks.
It's about understanding human behavior.
Exactly. Why do people make the decisions they do? What are their motivations and pain points?
Because if we can understand that,
We can create more effective strategies.
we can design experiences that truly resonate with our target audience.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all about connecting with people on an emotional level.
And I think the document does a great job of connecting those psychological insights to practical, actionable steps.
It does. It gives you a roadmap for success.
All right, so now that we've laid that foundation, I think it's time to tackle some of those common misconceptions about CRO.
Oh, yeah, the CRO myths.
The myths that can hold us back from achieving our full conversion potential.
Let's bust those myths.
Where do we start?
Well, I think a good place to start is with the myth that simply following best practices is enough to guarantee success.
So like a one-size-fits-all recipe for conversions?
Exactly.
Just follow these steps and boom, instant results.
Yeah, but it doesn't work that way.
Why not?
Because every business is unique. What works for one company might not work for another.
It's like trying to wear someone else's shoes.
Exactly. They might look great on them, but they might not fit you.
So we can't just copy and paste someone else's strategy.
No, we need to tailor our approach to our specific audience, our industry, our brand.
So customization is key.
Customization is key, yeah. We need to understand the why behind those best practices and then figure out how they apply to our unique context.
Okay, so no magic bullets.
No magic bullets, I'm afraid.
All right, what's the next myth we need to debunk?
Let's talk about the myth that CRO doesn't work.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely heard that one before. It's like giving up before you even start.
Right, but I think this myth often stems from impatience and a misunderstanding of how CRO actually works.
Okay, explain that.
CRO is a process. It's not a one-time fix.
It takes time.
It takes time. It takes experimentation. It takes data analysis.
So you're not going to see results overnight.
Probably not, no. It's about continuous improvement constantly testing, analyzing, and refining your strategies.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. It's about building that culture of experimentation within your team.
And speaking of copying, another myth is that copying your competitors is a winning strategy.
Oh, yeah, that's tempting, right? You see what your competitors are doing and you think, well, if it's working for them, it'll work for me too.
It seems logical.
It does, but it's often a mistake.
Why?
Because you don't know the why behind their choices.
Oh.
Maybe they've done a ton of research and testing and they have a very specific reason for doing things a certain way.
And we don't have that insight?
Exactly. So you could be copying something that's actually not effective for your business.
So it's not about blind imitation.
No, it's about understanding the underlying principles and then applying them to your own situation.
Okay, now this next myth is one that I think a lot of people who are new to CRO tools fall into.
Oh, yeah.
The belief that the tool will tell you exactly when to stop a test.
Ah, yes. The all-knowing CRO tool.
Just set it and forget it.
If only it were that simple.
So what's the reality?
The reality is that CRO tools are just that. Tools.
They're not magic?
No, they can provide valuable insights, but they can't replace human judgment.
So we still need to use our brains.
Absolutely. We need to understand our data, we need to understand our goals, and we need to make informed decisions about when to stop a test.
So it's about using those tools strategically.
Exactly, yeah. Not just blindly following what they tell you.
Okay, and finally, let's address a myth that I think we all fall into from time to time.
Okay, what's that?
The belief that testing confirms opinions.
Oh, yeah, confirmation bias, it's a powerful thing.
It's so easy to look for data that supports what we already believe.
It is, and that's why it's so important to approach testing with an open mind.
So even if we think we know the answer.
We need to be willing to let the data prove us wrong.
Because sometimes the data will surprise us.
It often does. The best CRO strategies are the ones that are based on data, not opinions.
So it's about letting the data guide our decisions, even if it challenges our assumptions.
Exactly.
That's how we learn and grow.
All right, so we've talked about the foundational principles of CRO. We've gone through those 15 best practices, and we've debunked some common myths.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Now, before we wrap things up, I have a thought-provoking question for you.
Okay, I'm ready.
Given all that we've discussed, what's one element on your own website you'd be interested in A/B testing first?
That's a great question. You know, I've been thinking about testing my calls to action lately.
Your calls to action?
Yeah, you know, those buttons that encourage people to take a specific action, like sign up now or learn more.
Right.
I feel like I could be doing a better job of optimizing those.
And there's always room for improvement, right?
Exactly. So I'm thinking of experimenting with different wording, different colors, different placements, and see what resonates best with your audience.
Yeah, because those small changes can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And the beauty of A/B testing is that you can track those results and see what actually works.
It takes the guesswork out of it.
So are there any specific hypotheses you have in mind?
Well, I'm curious to see if using more action-oriented language in my calls to action would lead to a higher click-through rate.
Like instead of learn more, you might say, get started today.
Exactly, something that creates a sense of urgency.
And that could be a really effective strategy, especially if your target audience is looking for quick results.
Right, and I'm also thinking about experimenting with the color of my buttons.
Oh yeah, color can be a powerful psychological trigger.
It can, and I'm wondering if using a more contrasting color would make my buttons stand out more and attract more clicks.
That's a great hypothesis. And there's really only one way to find out.
Test it.
Exactly. Run an A/B test and see what the data tells you.
I'm excited to get started.
Me too. Now, before we dive into that, I think it's important to remember that data is only part of the equation.
Right. We need to connect those data points to the human element.
We need to understand the why behind the numbers.
Exactly. Why are people clicking here but not there? What's motivating them to take action?
And how can we use that understanding to create a more intuitive and engaging user experience?
Because ultimately, that's what CRO is all about.
It's about making it easy and enjoyable for people to interact with your brand.
And convert into loyal customers.
Exactly. All right, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's one final piece of advice you'd give to someone who's just starting out on their CRO journey?
I'd say embrace the mindset of continuous learning and experimentation.
It's not a one-and-done thing.
No, it's a journey. There will be successes, there will be setbacks, but the key is to keep learning and keep growing.
And to always be testing and optimizing.
Exactly, because the world of CRO is constantly evolving.
New technologies, new techniques, new trends.
You got to stay ahead of the curve.
Well said. Well, that brings us to the end of this part of our deep dive on conversion rate optimization.
It was a pleasure discussing this with you.
Likewise. And we'll be back soon with more insights and strategies to help you boost those conversions.
Stay tuned.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
So where were we?
Right. We were about to bust some myths about CRO.
Yes, those pesky myths.
Yeah, let's do it. What's the first one?
Well, a common one is that you just need to follow best practices and you'll be fine.
So, like, there's some magic formula out there.
Yeah, like a one-size-fits-all solution.
But that's not really true, is it?
Not at all. The document emphasizes that every business is different.
So what works for one company
might not work for another.
You can't just blindly copy what someone else is doing.
Nope. You need to customize your approach.
So you need to understand your own audience.
Your industry, your brand, all of that.
And then tailor those best practices to fit your specific situation.
Exactly. It's not about following a recipe.
It's about understanding the principles behind those best practices.
And figuring out how they apply to you.
Okay, so no magic bullets.
No magic bullets, I'm afraid.
What's another myth we need to debunk?
A big one is that CRO doesn't work.
Oh, I've definitely heard that one.
It's easy to get discouraged, right?
Yeah, especially if you're not seeing results right away.
But the problem is often impatience.
Okay.
The document points out that CRO takes time.
It's not a quick fix.
No, it's a process. It's about continuous improvement.
So you need to be patient?
And persistent. You need to keep testing and analyzing and refining your strategies.
So it's more like a marathon than a sprint.
Exactly.
And speaking of things that take time, let's talk about copying competitors.
Oh, yeah. It's tempting to look at what your competitors are doing and think, well, if it's working for them, it'll definitely work for me.
Right. It seems logical.
But the document cautions against that.
Why?
Because you don't know the context.
You don't know why they're doing what they're doing.
Exactly. Maybe they've done a ton of research and testing and have a very specific reason for making certain choices.
And maybe those choices wouldn't make sense for your business.
Right. So you could actually be hurting your conversions by blindly copying your competitors.
So instead of copying,
we need to understand
the why behind those choices.
And then figure out how those principles apply to our own situation.
Okay, now let's talk about CRO tools.
Okay.
There's a myth that these tools can tell you exactly when to stop a test.
Oh, yeah, that one's a classic.
Like the tool has all the answers.
Like it's some kind of magic oracle.
But is that really the case?
Not quite. The document emphasizes that these tools are just that. They're tools.
They're not a replacement for human judgment?
Exactly. They can provide valuable data and insights.
But you still need to interpret that data.
And make decisions based on your understanding of your business and your goals.
So you need to use these tools strategically.
And not just blindly follow what they tell you.
Okay. And finally, let's talk about a myth that I think we all fall prey to from time to time.
Okay, what's that?
The myth that testing confirms opinions.
Oh, yeah. Confirmation bias. It's a sneaky one.
It's so easy to look for data that supports what we already believe.
It is, and that's why it's so important to approach testing with an open mind.
So even if we think we know the answer,
we need to be willing to let the data prove us wrong.
Because sometimes the data will tell us something completely different than what we expected.
And that's okay. That's how we learn.
So the key is to let the data guide our decisions.
Even if it challenges our assumptions.
All right, so we've talked about those foundational principles, we've gone through the best practices, and we've debunked some common myths. What's next?
Well, now that we've laid all that groundwork, I think it's time for a little thought experiment.
Okay, I like where this is going. I'm curious, what's one thing you'd want to test on your own website after this deep dive?
Oh, that's a good one. You know what I've been thinking about testing my calls to action?
Okay, those buttons that say sign up or learn more.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's room for improvement there, you know.
Always, always.
So I was thinking of experimenting with different wording, colors, placements, that sort of thing.
I see. See what grabs people's attention.
Exactly. Because even small tweaks can have a big impact.
Totally. And with A/B testing, you can actually see the result.
Take the guesswork out of it.
Any specific hypotheses you have about your calls to action?
Well, I've been wondering if using stronger action words would get more clicks.
Instead of learn more, you might say, get started today.
Exactly. Yeah, something with a little more oomph.
A little more urgency.
Yeah, and maybe playing around with the button color, too.
Ooh, yeah. Color psychology can be powerful.
Right. So I'm thinking a more contrasting color might stand out more.
Interesting. Only one way to find out.
Test it.
Exactly. Let the data guide you. But before we go too deep down that rabbit hole, I think it's super important to remember that data isn't everything.
You're right. We need to connect those numbers back to the human element.
Understand the why behind the clicks.
Yeah. Why are people clicking here but not there? What's making them take action?
If we can figure that out,
we can create a much better user experience.
And that's what CRO is all about.
Making it easy and enjoyable for people to interact with your brand.
And become those loyal customers we all want.
Absolutely. So before we wrap up this deep dive, any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are just starting out with CRO?
Ooh, good question.
I'd say the most important thing is to embrace that spirit of experimentation.
So don't be afraid to try new things.
Exactly. CRO is a journey. It's all about learning and growing and constantly improving.
And remember, it's not about perfection.
No, it's about progress.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive into the world of CRO.
It really has.
Thank you so much for sharing your
Thanks for tuning in. That's it for this episode of Mind Your Conversions, brought to you by Fiber. I hope you are leaving with fresh ideas and strategies to take your marketing and your conversions to the next level. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Thanks for listening. Until then, take care, and we'll see you next time.